All right, welcome back to another video, or if you're new here, welcome to the channel. My name is Alex. I taught myself Spanish over the course of quite a few years. I did it the hard way, and so there's a lot of concepts and understanding that I have of how the English brain thinks about Spanish. So that's what I do on this channel. And today we're going to be going through a listening comprehension exercise, doing something that I actually used to do myself, which is finding a show I like dubbed in Spanish, and then studying it and trying to understand what they're saying, slowing it down if it was a little bit too fast, pausing it, replaying it multiple times, and just kind of studying the grammar and what they're saying. So what I used to do when I was a beginner is I would try and find the scene in English and then watch it in Spanish, but we don't have time to do that right now, so we're just going to jump straight into the Spanish. If you need to pause the video, replay whatever was said, please do so. But yeah, let's jump into it.
Vamos a empezar. Necesito dos personas para la escena.
Okay, so like I said, you can replay that, but he said, vamos a empezar. Necesito dos personas para la escena. So, vamos a empezar means let's start, because empezar means to start. Now, you could also say comenzar, so like to commence, that's also to start, but yeah, empezar is what he used. And vamos a empezar is actually exactly the same way as we speak in English. So, hold on, I'll just focus on this one right now. So, we say I'm going to start to form the future tense in English. And they do the exact same thing in Spanish. So, in this case, it's we, vamos is the verb ir, to go. And the conjugation of it for we is vamos. So, this means we're going to start. Okay? Vamos, we're going. A, to. Empezar, start. So you don't conjugate the empezar. That's just the way it works. If you want to say, I'm going to run, it's the same thing. So you take the verb ir, but this time you conjugate it for I. So it's voy. So you just kind of have to memorize those conjugations. It's an irregular verb. Obviously, because how does ir become voy? Pretty irregular. So voy a empezar, or voy a correr. I'm going to run. Okay, so that's how you form it. It's ir, conjugated for whatever subject you want to say it for, plus a, which is to, and then the verb infinitive, whatever it is that you want to do, or that you're going to do. So, we're going to start. Then he says, necesito dos personas para la escena, which means, so necesitar is to need. That's probably kind of obvious. Necessary, need, right? So if in the present tense, when the conjugation ends with o, it's yo. Yo necesito. I need. So yo ends with o in the present tense. So this means I need. Dos is the number two. Personas, people. For, para. The scene. La escena. So you can kind of see it's very similar to English, right? The sentence order is the exact same. Escena is even very similar to the word scene. So Spanish and English actually do have a lot of similarities, and it's important to make those associations. It just makes the process easier. So let's move on.
Señor Cotter! Señor Cotter!
Okay, he's saying Señor Cotter or something. I don't know. That's probably the name of the guy.
Muy bien, Michael. Y
Muy bien, Michael, sí, he says kind of hesitantly. Muy bien just means very well, or like sure.
nadie.
And then he says nadie, which means no one. So nadie means no one. Okay, if you want to know how to say someone, it's alguien, means someone. All right, now let's continue. I won't do the full video, I'll only go up to a minute because it'll take forever. But anyways.
¿Qué tal, Maribeth?
Bien.
Adelante. ¿Por qué?
So he said, ¿Qué tal, Mary Beth? So he was looking for a volunteer. Let me just shift the camera a little bit here. He was looking for a volunteer, no one was volunteering. So he says, ¿Qué tal, Mary Beth? Now, if you're familiar with Spanish greetings, you would know that ¿Qué tal means like what's up? Or how are you? It's just a way of saying like, ¿Cómo estás? ¿Qué tal? What's going on? But in this case, he's not saying what's going on, Mary Beth. He's saying, how about Mary Beth? ¿Qué tal, Mary Beth? So the ¿qué tal can be used in various contexts to say like, how about we do this? Like, ¿qué tal nos vamos a la playa? How about we go to the beach? Right? So depending on the context, you'll know, obviously in this case, he's not saying, what's up, Mary Beth, because that just wouldn't make sense. So he's saying, how about you, Mary Beth? Okay?
¿Qué no empiezas, Maribeth?
I think he said, ¿por qué? So, ¿por qué no empiezas, Mary Beth? So let's break that down. ¿Por qué no empiezas, Mary Beth? So again, this is the verb empezar. Now you might notice empezar it has an E here, but yet here we have an IE. So this is one of those verbs that changes from E to IE. Now if you want a list of that, I don't have it. I never had it. I never studied it. I don't suggest you do because it's just way too overwhelming to memorize. Because it's not just, there's verbs that go from like U to UE. There's so many different things to memorize. I never memorized the lists of like verbs that change their root. So don't do it either, in my opinion. It's just so much easier to get exposed to it enough times that you just remember it's not empiezas, it's empiezas. And you hear it enough times that you would know empiezas just sounds wrong. But as a beginner, you don't know that, right? So this is just how I learned. So, ¿por qué no empiezas, Mary Beth? So I have a video on conjugations on my channel. I think it's something like the way to make conjugations easier or something. And just like I said, when it ends with O, that's yo. When it ends with es, that's tú. It's always like that. At least in the present tense and in other tenses as well. Not all of them, but anyways. So this is the present tense. So it's why don't you start, Mary Beth? Why don't you start, Mary Beth? Now, in English, we have the word do as a question former. So like, do you like whatever? Do you want whatever? Does he have whatever? So do, does. And then in the negative, it's do not. So not in Spanish is no. No in Spanish is also no. They don't have that question word of do. So that's why there's no, like, you might think to do is hacer. So why isn't there the verb hacer? But it's not. The to do verb is hacer, but the question word do is a completely different concept. And that doesn't exist in Spanish. They don't have that question word in Spanish of do you, does he. And that's why in Spanish they have an upside down question mark at the beginning of a question, because in English we know it's going to be a question. If you see do you, blah, 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 you already know from the beginning that it's a question. In Spanish, they don't. So that's why they put the question mark at the beginning so the person knows that they're about to read a question. So why don't you start, Mary Beth? Again, this is how you conjugate empezar for you, and it ends with S. Okay?
La 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 la.
¡Boom! Detective Michael Scar del FBI. Solo piénsenlo.
So he says Detective Michael Scott. His name is Michael Scott, Detective Michael Scott, del FBI. So F is the letter F, B, E. So from the FBI. Okay, moving on.
La la.
¡Boom! Detective Michael Scar del FBI. Solo piénsenlo. ¿Qué es lo más excitante que puede pasar en la televisión, en las...
Okay, hold on, that's a lot. So solo piénselo. ¿Qué es lo más excitante que puede pasar? Solo piénselo. ¿Qué es lo más excitante que puede pasar?
películas o en la vida real? Piénsenlo. ¿Qué es lo más excitante que puede pasar en la televisión, en las películas o en la vida real?
Okay, en la televisión o en la vida real, approximately. So there's a few concepts here that I'm not going to go all in on because then we'd have an hour-long video and I would need a whole class to break these down. So here he's telling you to think about it. So this comes from the verb pensar, which means to think. Again, this is one of those verbs that if you want to say I think, it's not penso, right? It ends with O because it's yo pienso, but it's pienso. So it's one of those verbs that changes from E to IE. And so again, not worth memorizing a list of them. You just get used to it as you go on. So pensar is to think. So what is this lo? That's a whole concept, and it comes up twice here that I can't really explain quickly. I wouldn't do it justice. But in many contexts, it means it. So he's saying just think it, or just think about it. The about is kind of implied. So solo means just or only, right? So just think about it. So I won't go in depth on the lo for this video. It's its whole own concept. Then he says que as a question. So that's why I put the accent on it. What is, and then again, lo. In this case, it doesn't mean it. I don't want to confuse you, so I won't go in depth on what it means. I'll just tell you what it means. Que es, what is the most exciting thing? The lo, in many contexts, means the thing. Okay, I'll just introduce it to you quickly, but don't worry if it confuses you. But lo que, the way I like to think about it, is the thing that. Or there's other ways to think about it too, but to not introduce multiple ways, I'll just leave it with this. So the thing that, but what do we have in between the lo and the que? We have más excitante, most exciting. So let's add that, más excitante. So the thing that, the most exciting thing that. Lo más excitante que, the most exciting thing that puede pasar. So I'll make a video on lo. It's a whole thing, so I don't want to go too deep on it right now, so don't worry about it if that doesn't make sense. But the most exciting things, just think about it. What is the most exciting thing que puede pasar? So puede comes from the verb puede comes from the verb poder. And again, in that conjugation video, I explained that, so if it was you, so, my mind is everywhere. Let me put it this way. Poder means to be able to. So that's the verb we use when we say I can, you can, he can, we can. That's the verb poder. I like the fact that the verb to be able to is related to the noun power, because when you think about it, if you're able to do something, it's like you're saying, you have the power to do it. So it's an easy way to remember that, poder also means power as a noun, but in this case, it's being used as a verb, right? Because it's conjugated. You don't conjugate nouns. So puede is the he, she, it conjugation. So in this case, we're not talking about a he, we're not talking about a she, we're talking about an it, because he's talking about what is the most exciting thing that can happen. Pasar is to happen or to pass. What's the most exciting thing that can pass, that can happen? So we're talking about the thing. What is the most exciting thing? So that's an it. It's a he, she, it, right? We're not talking about me, puedo. We're not talking about you, puedes. We're talking about the most exciting thing, which is an it, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. So that's why it's puede. It's not puedes, which would be you can. It's not puedo, which would be I can. And then puede pasar. Why is pasar not conjugated? It's because when you have two verbs in a row, just like in English, so like what is the most exciting thing that can happen, is what he's saying with this line right here. So que, what, es lo más excitante que, the most exciting thing that, puede, can happen. So even in English, we don't conjugate the second verb, but we conjugate the first. Okay, so let me give you another example. Let's use the verb quiero, I want. Quiero correr is I want to run. Quiero is conjugated, right? Because this is the verb querer. So we're conjugating it for yo quiero. Again, it ends with o. And again, it's one of those that changes its form a bit. Quiero. But the correr, the er, right? That's the infinitive. That's unconjugated. It's the exact same thing in English. Correr means to run. So unconjugated, and then the want is conjugated, right? Because if I said he wants, the want would change to wants, so it would be a different conjugation. Whereas the to run stays the same. It's in its infinitive form. And it's the same thing with like puede pasar. The first verb is conjugated, second verb isn't. Exact same as English. So, yeah. What is the most exciting thing that can happen on television or in real life? La vida real. So that one was quite complicated. Probably took up a lot of our time. But yeah, hopefully you didn't get too confused. Anyways, without going too in depth on that concept to not overwhelm you, hopefully what we went through at least gave you some new vocabulary, some new concepts, some new ideas, and hopefully it helped. And we'll be doing more of these, so if it did help, then I will see you in the next one.